This week's parasha we have the Chet HaMeraglim that Chazal tell us HaKadosh Baruch Hu said, "Atem b'chisem b'chia shel chinam, ani ekva lachem b'chia l'doros." You cried for nothing, but I'm going to give you something to cry for all generations, because the night that they came back was Tisha B'av. And so that set the precedent that there was, Tisha B'av is a time that's there's a fissure in Tisha B'av. It's a time that's muchan l'puranius rachman litzlan. It's all because they cried a b'chia shel chinam. They cried for nothing. HaKadosh says now you're going to have something to really cry for all generations. It seems that the einish seems very disproportionate to the crime. They were duped, right? They were sold a story by the Meraglim. They believed them. They cried. They said, no, because you cried, now you're going to really have something to cry for. You have to understand the Mida Keneged Mida. The Gemara in Sanhedrin, in Perek Chelek, talks about that in Megillas Eicha, which we read on Tisha B'av. After all the intermediate prokim between the first and the last, also go in the Seder of the Aleph Beis, like Ashrei, right? Except that there's an inversion. It goes from a pasuk that starts from Samach to a pasuk that starts with Pei, and then it goes back to Ayin. And so the Gemara, says this alludes to the Chet HaMeraglim, that precedent Tisha B'av. She'amru befihem ma shelo ra'u beinayim. They said with their mouths what they didn't see with their eyes. So that's why the peh, right, is before the ayin, because they said with their mouths something which they didn't see with their eyes. That's a peh before ayin. So the first question is, if that's the case, if they saw, they said what they didn't see, there shouldn't be the letter ayin at all, right? Because they said what they didn't see. So why does it come back after a pasuk with pei, a pasuk that begins with ayin? If they actually said but PM, something which they didn't see be'inayim, so why is there a pasuk that starts with ayin at all? Right? But also, the question is that factually true? Right? I'm going to read to you how the Meraglim describe Eretz Yisrael and how Moshe Rabbeinu himself describes Eretz Yisrael in Parshas Eikim. I'm going to read it pasuk for pasuk. So they come back and they say, the nation that dwells there is very strong, right? And the cities are very fortified. And also the children of the giants we saw there. And then they add later on, right, that we saw, these, the giants, the children of giants, right? We are in our own eyes as grasshoppers, and so we were in their eyes. The description of the Meraglim. Moshe Rabbeinu, 40 years later, addressing the people who are about to go into Eretz Yisrael, Parshas Eikim. Shema Yisrael, you're about to inherit a nation. They're much bigger, much stronger than you are. Orim Gedos B'tzoros B'Shamayim, very great fortified cities up to the skies. Am Gadol Varam B'nei Anakim, a very great and high nation, the children of giants. Asher Yata Yadata, Vata Shamata, you've heard. Mis Yatsev Ufnei B'nei Anak, who could take on the children of the giants? The same description. Fortified cities, the giants have a track record of being, undefeatable. They told the truth. They told the truth. So what does it mean? They said with their mouths, but they didn't see with their eyes. So, when the Torah, legislated against Lashon Hara, so everyone knows, look, the difference between Lashon Hara and Motzi Shemra is that Lashon Hara is true. So now, this sometimes causes people to, a certain revulsion in people. How could the Torah legislate against telling the truth? Right? It's the truth. Now, what's bad about Lashon Hara if it's the truth? So let's go back and take a look at the difference, between what Moshe Rabbeinu said and what the Meraglim said. Right? The raw description is the same. What's the difference? Context. Right? The Meraglim said, right? Everyone knows it. They will defeat us. What does Moshe Rabbeinu say? Using the exact same, raw description, right? V'yadatayom. Ki Hashem Okecha hu over v'necha eshoch lahu hu yashmidem v'hu yachnem v'necha v'rasham v'vatam maher kasher diber Hashem loch HaKadosh Baruch Hu is going to go before you, and he's going to smite them, and he's going to destroy them, and he's going to subjugate them, and you will inherit them. Context. The raw facts are the same. The difference is in context. The Meraglim said the facts about the big fortified cities and the Elidei are not in the context of it's hopeless. We can't. It's a suicide mission. Right? Moshe Rabbeinu says over the exact same facts, but in what context? The context of, and despite that, HaKadosh Baruch Hu is going to knock them down for us, and we are able to take them. When we say Lashon Hara is true, right? That's not strictly the truth. Lashon Hara is based on true information. The Nakuda of Lashon Hara is the spin that you put on the raw facts. How you raise these raw facts to back up a negative perspective that you want to say about this person. If it would be possible to say the raw facts without having any context or any editorial connected to it, it wouldn't be Lashon Hara. The problem is that, the way you're saying it and in the setting that you're saying it to put a derogatory perspective on the person that you're talking about. The Nakuda of Lashon Hara is not in the emes. It's the spin that you put on the emes. That's what we say in today's talk. The media doesn't report the news. The media makes the news. Now, what does that mean? It doesn't mean that I'm saying that the footage that they show of, let's say, Israeli soldiers in Gaza shooting into the Palestinian crowds. I think the footage is probably true. It's probably bona fide footage. The nakuda of how the media is making the news is the spin that they put on it. Right? Shooting at civilians as opposed to shooting at terrorists in self-defense. Right? The nakuda of Lashon Hara, that we say Lashon Hara is true, it doesn't mean that Lashon Hara is the real truth. It means to say that Lashon Hara uses true information, but the nakuda of Lashon Hara is the negative spin that you put on it. And that negative spin, once you've put it on, what has happened? So where's the first case of Lashon Hara we ever found in the Torah? First Lashon Hara in history. The Nachash. That's right. Nachash and Chavli, exactly. So, the Nachash is talking Lashon Hara about a Kodesh Baruch Hu. He knows that at the moment that you eat from this tree, you won't need him anymore. So after the woman heard the Nachash out, so it's a very interesting pasuk. Right? Right. Vatera Isha Kitovet Samachal, after hearing what the Nachash said. She looked at the tree and saw it looks good to eat from. It's very desirous in the eyes. Another form of is desired to have the success that the tree would bring. So she took from the fruit and ate it, and she gave it to her husband also, and he ate it with her. So the obvious question is, it's not the first time she saw the tree. Right, it says, after Nachash said, so she said, Vater Isha Za'etz, Kitovu Lamachal. Right, she knew what the Adam Rishon had identified the tree to her, showed it to her beforehand, and instructed her not even to touch it. So she knew what the tree looks like, right? But now, after Nachash speaks to her, it's like she's seeing it for the first time. So there's no question in my mind that that's what bothered Rashi. And Rashi says like this, on the words, Vatere ha'isha, the woman saw. Right? She knew what it looked like, so it doesn't mean now she's, as if she's seeing it for the first time. Vatere isha, Rasa Devarav Shel Nachash, she saw what the Nachash was saying. She saw the words of Nachash. Ve'enola, and then, it was desirous to her, it made sense to her. Ve'eminaso, and she believed it. Right? Once you're makabel Lashon Hara, so even though the spin that was put on the facts is a fabrication, of the editorial, of the person who is, framing the facts that way, once you hear it, you can't help but see it that way. She heard what the Nachash had to say, says Rashi, and now that's the way the tree looks. Once she heard the spin that he put on it, she couldn't help but see the tree in any other way than the way the Nachash described it. Right? That's the power of Lashon Hara. Right? That when you put that spin on the raw facts, that spin gets incorporated in the raw facts that the eye sees, and now you can't help but to see it that way. You can't help but to see it that way. That's what happened to Chava. When she heard the spin that the Nachash says about the tree, now she looks at the tree that way. once Am Yisrael were makabel the lashon hara of what the Meraglim said about the raw facts. They didn't lie about the very raw facts, that it's inhabited by giants and they're big fortified cities. Moshe Rabbeinu confirms those facts in Parshat Ekev. But once they took on the spin, and therefore they are unconquerable and undefeatable, and it would be a suicide mission, now it looks that way. Right? Once you got that editorial on the facts, now the facts, look the way, the spin that you put on them. And that's what it means, that after the pay, there's an ayin. They said, b'piyeh mashaloru beinem. What they said with their mouths, which they didn't see with their eyes, was the fact that it's unconquerable. That you didn't see. You just saw that it's inhabited by giants, right, and big fortified cities. No one said it's unconquerable. You decide it's unconquerable. That's the nakuda that you said with your mouth that you didn't actually see with your eyes. The editorial that you put on it. But once you said it, and you believe it after peh ayin. Once you said it, and you believe it, you convince yourself, now everyone sees it that way. And that's what it means, after pays an ayin, what they didn't see with their eyes was the editorial that therefore it's unconquerable. That they jumped to that conclusion. They didn't actually see that. They superimposed that on the facts. But once it was said that way, and that spin was it, then you can't help but see it that way. That's why peh and ayin, after they said that lashon hara, right? Now you can't help but see it that way. And that's the power of lashon hara. We speak lashon hara about someone, you have really destroyed his life. Because once people hear that type of perspective on a guy, they can't help but to see him in any other light. You have really, really destroyed a person's life. As I say, perception is reality. Once that editorial or that opinion has slipped in together with the raw facts, that becomes the perspective. And perspective is reality. And that's what it means. Am Yisrael was told by HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Atem b'chisem b'chia shochinam, you bets were crying over nothing. Because what were you afraid of? The fact that the Meraglim said it's unconquerable and that's a suicide mission. That nakuda, that it's a suicide mission, that the Meraglim added. That was their editorial on the raw facts. Right? And you cried over something that isn't, because they are conquerable if HaKadosh Baruch Hu helps you. But since you see it that way, now it's your reality. Because once you're makabel lashon hara, you can't help but see it that way. You see it that way, and that's how you relate to it. That's reality to you. HaKadosh says, I give you your own reality. You chose that reality by believing the lashon hara. You chose that reality. Now you see it that way. So now it'll be a bechir l'doros, because you made that your perspective. Perspective is reality. Right? So we have to understand over with this. We can understand one more thing, a very interesting halacha l'gabe hilchos lashon hara, right? That Chazal say something which seemingly is counterintuitive. Right? One person speaks lashon hara, the other person is makabel. Right? They both did an isur. Who's worse? What's the halacha say? The makabel. It's counterintuitive, right? Because the guy who spun the tale, he's like really evil, right? With malice, he said this thing. The guy who spun the tale was talking nonsense, something shelo haya v'lo nivra. The guy who's makabel it believes it, right? And by believing it, you make it reality. The being makabel lashon hara, as it says by Chava, when she was makabel the nochash's lashon hara, now she saw it that way. Now, of course, in many cases, the Baal lashon hara himself is makabel lashon hara. He also indoctrinates himself first before he indoctrinates others. Right? Maybe already indoctrinated himself, and that's why he's spreading it to others. So very often the Mesaper is a makabel in his own right. Right? He believes what he's saying. Right? But that's the pshat. Why the makabel is worse than the Mesaper. Right? Because believing it makes it reality. Because now you can't help, you'll always see it that way, and once you see it that way, it's your reality. And that's the lesson that we learned over here. The lethal force of lashon hara. Right? That when you're makabel lashon hara, you can't help but to see it that way from that point onwards. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, you chose that reality, you're going to have to live with it.
Let's get out.